Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on the channel, and in today's video it's another episode of Most Haunted Buildings. We are rapid with these videos. We're on episode 3 already, and in today's video we are going to be looking at the Enfield Poltergeist. There's been a lot of coverage on this by the BBC, there's been books about this haunting, and there's even been a movie called, and I'm sure it's a very famous movie, called The Conjuring 2. One of my most favourite movies out there. It is a really fun watch. I'm excited to look at this haunting. So, without further ado, let's get into the context behind it all. So, the Enfield Poltergeist was a claim of supernatural activity at 284 Green Street, which was a council house in Primsdown, England in London, between 1977 and 1979, and the alleged poltergeist activity was centered on sisters Janet, who was aged 11, and Margaret Hodgson, aged 13. Now, some members of the SPR will look into that in further depth later on, believe the haunting to be genuine, while others, such as Anita Gregory and John Beloff, were unconvinced and found evidence that the girls had faked most incidents for the benefit of journalists. However, the members of SPR, or the new sort of, it's called Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. It's a bit of a mouthful, including stage magicians such as Milbourne Christopher, Joe Nichol, criticised paranormal investigators for being credulous, whilst also identifying elements of the case as being indicative of a hoax. No one knows if this is real. Yet again, we're covering one of these cases. We're going to look at the evidence, and then at the end, we're going to decide whether it is real or if the haunting was fake. Now, the claims. In August of 1977, single parent Peggy Hodgson called the Metropolitan Police, or the Metro Police, to her home at 284 Green Street in Enfield, London. She said that she witnessed furniture moving, and that 2 of her 4 children had heard knockings in the walls, and on the walls, and in the walls. The children included were Janet, aged 11, yet again, and Margaret, who was aged 13. A police constable came out to the house and reported witnessing a chair wobble and slide, in her own words, but could not determine the cause of the movement. Later, the claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and literal children levitating. Over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including the neighbours, paranormal investigators and journalists, each of their own, saw heavy furniture moving off its own accord, objects being thrown, and the sisters levitating. So plenty of people have seen this, and also many recorded knocking noises and a gruff voice. The story was regularly covered in the press, and specifically in the Daily Mirror newspaper, until reports suddenly came to an end in 1979. Why was this? Maybe it was caused as a fake, maybe it wasn't. I do not know. Now let's get further into these investigations that took place in the house. Now, I talked about the SPR earlier. Now that actually stands for the Society for Psychical Research, and members Maurice Grosse and Guy Leon Playfair reported, and I quote, "curious whistling and barking noises coming from Janet's general direction." So, could be Janet's making these noises, could be something else. Although Playfair maintained the paranormal activity was genuine, and later wrote this in his book, This House is Haunted, the true story of a poltergeist, in 1980, and that an entity was to blame for the Enfield disturbances. He often doubted the children's veracity and wondered if they were just playing tricks and exaggerating. Still, Grosse and Playfair believed that even though some of the alleged poltergeist activity was faked by the girls, such as bending spoons, they still believed other incidences were genuine. Other paranormal investigators, though, who studied the case, which included Ed and Lorraine Warren, the American really famous demonologists, they visited the house in 1978 and were convinced that the events had a supernatural explanation. However, Janet was detected by a video camera in an adjoining room, caught her bending spoons and attempting to bend an iron bar. Grosse had observed Janet's banging a broom handle on the ceiling and hiding his tape recorder. She obviously was the root cause of these instances, or was she? According to Playfair, one of Janet's voices, whom she called Bill, displayed a habit of suddenly changing the topic, and it was a habit that Janet had as well. Many similarities. When Janet and Margaret admitted pranking to journalists, Grosse and Playfair compelled the girls to retract their confessions. The two men were mocked by other researchers for being duped. And this is where Renee Haynes come into it. She's a she's a researcher. I can't, yet again, tick it off in the words that I do not know in this series, because there's a lot of them. But she noted that doubts were raised about the alleged poltergeist at the SPR conference in Cambridge in 1978, where videos from Enfield were examined. The SPR investigated Anita Gregory. She stated the Enfield case had been overrated, characterizing several episodes of the girls' behaviour as suspicious. She didn't believe it. She just thought it was staged and suggested Janet was practicing ventriloquism. And it's also, you should note that Janet was a really good sports person in her school. She'd won many medals for jumping, which obviously levitation and jumping, very, very similar. And there's actually a picture of her jumping off her bed, but then people say that, oh, it's her levitating, when it's actually her jumping off the bed. Now, some skeptical interpretations of this. A skeptic called Joe Nickel of the US-based Committee of Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, he examined the findings of the paranormal investigators Morrissey Gross and Playfair. He criticised them for being overly credulous, and when a supposedly disembodied demonic voice was heard, Playfair noted that, as always, Janet's lips hardly seemed to be moving. He states that a remote-controlled still camera, the photographer, was not present in the room of the girls, timed to take a picture every 15 seconds, was shown to reveal pranking by the girls. And obviously that picture of her sort of jumping out of her bed, and it was common that he said that this was common gymnastics for her, and it was almost like she was bouncing off her bed like it was a trampoline. And it's worth mentioning she was a school champion as well. And there's multiple reasons why this could be fake. However, the response to these claims, they have... So, in a television interview for BBC Scotland, Jeanette was observed to gain attention by waving her hand, then putting her hand in front of her mouth, while a claimed disembodied voice was heard. During the interview, both girls were asked the question, "How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?" And Janet replied, "It's not haunted." And Margaret, in a hushed tone, interrupted. She said, "Shut up." So, is there a bit of tomfoolery there? Yes, again, we're seeing a recurring theme of the girls pranking the press. And as a magician experienced in the dynamics of trickery, Nico explained Playfair's account and contemporary pressing clippings. He noted that the supposed poltergeist tended to act only when it was not being watched. But still, Morrissey Gross still believed there was no trickery going on, and he made some of the recordings available to the magician Bob Corti. And obviously magicians have been mentioned before in this case, and he said, "I came to the conclusion that there was nothing in what I had heard that was beyond the capabilities of an imaginative teenager." So there's countless of reasons why this is fake, and not many of the responses have been clear enough. They've just said, "Oh, it's real. Look at why it's real. It's totally real." However, in a 2016 article by a professor called Chris French, he mentioned multiple reasons why he believed this was a hoax. He said the two sisters involved admitted to hoaxing some of the activity. He also said the photo of Janet levitating above her bed could be explained as her just jumping. She said the spirit of an old man who supposedly possessed Janet took a great deal of interest in menstruation. Eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable. And then he also said other schoolgirl pranks before and after have got out of hand, so they're known for doing pranks, which is crazy to think that people believe these girls, and many people do still believe. After all of this, I actually want to now talk about a mockumentary that was made in 1992, and I actually had the CD for this, and I've watched it, and this was called Ghost Watch, written by Stephen Volk. I've done a full video on this. If you want to look in the channel, I'm sure it's there. And it was based on the Enfield Poltergeist, and this was where there was this ghost called Pipes, and he caused the pipes to bang. He caused everything to happen in this house. He was a poltergeist, apparently, and these investigators went out. They believed him until they captured one of the little girls banging on wardrobes in the middle of the night. Now, obviously, faking the banging. This was it for them. They sort of given up, but until the ghost took over the studio back in where Alan Partridge, where the hosts were doing it, until the ghost took over. So a very big theme of, yeah, they were faking, but they weren't faking it all, which in the case of the Enfield Poltergeist was the exact same thing. The exact same thing had happened. Later on, their Channel 4 made a documentary called Interview with a Poltergeist, and then it also featured in some episodes of ITV's series called Strange But True and Extreme Ghost Stories. Strange But True. They're claiming it was true. And then Sky Living in 2015 put out a television series called The Enfield Haunting. And then, of course, The Conjuring 2 was put out in 2016. 2018, there was a BBC Radio 4 programme about it. And even to the fact there was a play titled The Enfield Haunting that was announced to be premiered at the Theatre Royal in Brighton, and then touring around the world, and then it would be at the West End from 30th of November 2023 to March 2024. There's a literal play about this haunting. And then on the 27th of October 2023, Apple TV debuted the Enfield Poltergeist mini-series, filming the documentary and in a recreated set of the house. And this utilised actors lip-syncing to original tape recordings. And then they even brought out some videotapes that no one's seen before. It's really interesting. Now, that is pretty much it for the Enfield Haunting, the Enfield Poltergeist. I truly don't know if this case is real or if it's fake. I would have to go, if I had an answer, it would be that some of it's real, some of it was fake. But tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.